This is LSAT Prep Test 145, Section 1, Passage 1. It's about the Federal Theater Project's Negro Units, a government-funded African-American theater company consortium from the 1930s. It's a low-difficulty passage, and the structure is pretty straightforward, but there's a twist buried in paragraph 2 that catches people who read on autopilot. Now, this is a humanities passage. The author is making an argument, not just telling a story. The main point is that these Negro units were a breakthrough in African American theater because their internal disagreements actually produced something valuable, a genuinely diverse body of work. Now, paragraph 2 is the most important paragraph in this passage. I will come back to it. But first, paragraph 1, that's just background. The FTP was big, with 10,000 workers, 185 production units in 28 states, 500,000 people watching every week. Now, you don't need to memorize these numbers, they exist for one reason. The author wants you to feel the scale of this before narrowing the lens. And the lens does narrow pretty quickly. By the middle of the paragraph, you're focused entirely on the Negro units. You want to move through the stats here quickly. What you've got to hold on to is the claim at the very end. The author says these units came closer than any previous group to founding a truly national black theater. That is the thesis of the whole passage. And there's one word right before it you should notice, the word arguably. The author believes this claim, but they're hedging just enough to stay credible. That is a confident but measured tone. If you see an attitude question, that is your anchor. Then paragraph 2 is where students mess up. The paragraph opens by connecting the Negro units to the Harlem Renaissance. And that detail is important. The author is saying there was already a rich tradition of thinking about art and race before the FTP showed up. So when these units started arguing about what kind of plays to produce, that argument had real depth behind it. It was not chaos. It was people with different ideas who actually cared. Then the author lays out the debates. Folk drama versus urban realism versus adapting white playwrights' work. Blending into mainstream culture versus standing apart from it. Instructing versus entertaining. And there is a lot of tension packed in here. And your instinct on a fast read is to think the author is flagging a problem. All this fighting, all this disagreement, it sounds like dysfunction, but that would be wrong. Look at the last few sentences of that paragraph. All of those debates produced a wide range of productions reflecting diverse views and so on. So the author just turned every one of those disagreements into something good. The conflict was the source of the diversity. So if you've read these debates as a flaw, you've misread the entire passage. Then the swing Mikado shows up as the proof. The author is not picking a random production, they pick one that flipped the minstrel tradition. African-American performers doing an ironic take on a white classic. Now, that word inverted is carrying weight. The example is there to show the units weren't just putting on plays, they were using theater to challenge racial assumptions. And the author adds that the play pushed audiences to think about what it means to assume black roles both on and beyond the stage. That phrase stretches the point past theater into real life. The author chose this example because it proves the range and the ambition of what these units were doing. Now, paragraph 3 is short and the passage cuts off, but the piece you have zooms back out. The FTP kept theater alive during the Depression, and that's context, not argument. It tells you the Negro units did not exist in a vacuum. They had government support at a time when the arts were struggling. You want to read this quickly because it's reinforcing what you already know. Now, the key move here is the turn at the end of paragraph 2. Internal conflict becomes creative diversity. Now, every hard question in this passage will circle back to whether you understood that relationship. Now, the author's stance here is positive. They see their Negro unit as a genuine achievement. The main trap is treating the debates in paragraph 2 as criticism. The passage is built so that you wade through all that and then land on a payoff. Students who skim the end of paragraph 2 are going to walk into main point and attitude questions thinking the author was troubled by those fights, but the author was not. The author loved what came out of them. Now, before you hit the questions, make sure you know these 3 things. First, why does the author bring up the Harlem Renaissance? What work is it doing for the argument? Second, what is the relationship between the debates and the diversity of productions? And third, why is the swing Mikado the example the author chose instead of something simpler and safer?